All right, let's just jump right in. We hear about new digital currencies all the time, right? But what we're talking about today, it's something totally different. We're not talking about the next get rich quick coin. Nope. This is a really serious, thoughtful proposal to basically rebuild our entire global economic infrastructure from the ground up.
And the whole idea, this starting point for this massive project, is this really provocative claim. It's that the very foundation of our global economy, yeah, money itself, is fundamentally broken.
Okay, so before we can even get into what the solution looks like, we've got to really wrap our heads around the problem they're trying to solve. I mean, what exactly is so broken about the way things work right now? So, what's the deal? Well, if you look at the national currencies we all use today, they're kind of all over the place. They're fragmented, they can be really unstable. Worse, they get politicized, even weaponized through things like sanctions, or manipulated with capital controls. And that's not even mentioning inflation, which is just quietly eating away at our savings. And look, this isn't just some abstract economic theory, right? This stuff affects real people every single day. All right, so with that pretty big problem laid out, let's turn to the proposed answer. And the way it's framed is really important. This isn't just another crypto. Think of it more like a brand new design for money itself, almost like a neutral, shared public utility, like an economic road system, but for the entire world. And at the heart of it all is this thing called the global stablecoin. Now, the key phrase here, the absolute game changer, is that its value is tied to the world's economy as a whole, not just one country. So, you know how most stablecoins are pegged to the US dollar? Well, this is totally different. The whole point is to be independent of any single nation's politics or economic policy by tracking a global average instead.
And I love this analogy because it just clicks. It perfectly explains the core idea. Think about it. If you want people all over the world to work together, to truly cooperate, they need a common tool, a shared, reliable measuring stick for value, one that isn't constantly shrinking or stretching depending on what's happening politically in just one country.
Okay, so it's also really, really important to be clear about what this isn't. This is not some speculative coin you buy hoping it'll moon tomorrow. The entire focus is on stability for the long haul. It's about transparent rules and building a piece of infrastructure that could last for decades. It's not controlled by a company, and like we said, it's not pegged to a single currency like the dollar. All right, that all sounds great in theory, right? But the big question is, how does it actually work? I mean, how on earth do you create something that stays stable relative to the entire planet's economy? That sounds incredibly complex, so let's dig into the mechanics. Yes, exactly. That is the multi-trillion-dollar question, isn't it? Pegging a currency to one thing, like gold or the dollar, we get that. But how do you peg it to something as huge, as constantly changing as the entire world economy? Where do you even start? Well, the answer is something called the Global Value Index, or GVI for short, and it's actually a pretty elegant step-by-step process. First, you take a basket of major world currencies. Step 2, you weight each one based on its economic importance. Think GDP, trade volume, that sort of thing. Then, to keep things from being too jumpy, the whole index is smoothed out over time to reduce that day-to-day volatility. And the best part? The whole thing is updated automatically by the code. No one is manually fiddling with it. But of course, an index like this is only as good as the data it's fed. So how does it get trustworthy information? The system is designed to be super resilient. It uses a bunch of independent data sources. In the crypto space, these are called oracles. Basically, the protocol just pulls in all this price data from different places, calculates the median, the number in the middle, and just throws out any weird outliers. This makes the whole thing really hard to manipulate and actually encourages everyone to provide good, accurate data. Okay, this next part is maybe one of the most important pieces of the whole puzzle. Governance. How is this thing run? The entire system is built on this idea of constitutional economics. It's like having a country's constitution, but for money. It means there's a set of really firm, hard-coded rules that just can't be changed on a whim, not by a vote, not in an emergency. And this quote just says it all, perfectly. The rules for issuing new currency, the monetary policy, are set in stone. They're locked. It doesn't matter who you are, what group you're in, or what you vote on. You cannot override those rules and just, print more money. That promise of stability is literally coded into its DNA. So you might be asking, well, what can people actually vote on then? And there are clear boundaries. Think of it like this. Governance can make small adjustments, within very strict limits, like tweaking the weights in the currency basket or adding a new reliable data source. But what it cannot do is the big stuff. It can't seize your funds, it can't inflate the supply out of nowhere, it can't change the basic definition of the peg. Those fundamental rules, those core promises are untouchable, locked in by the code itself. Okay, we've gone through the what it is and the how it works. So for this last part, let's zoom all the way out and talk about the why. I mean, why go through all this incredible effort? Why is having a neutral economic layer for the world so important? Well, the thinking goes something like this. If we're ever going to solve truly global problems, we need to be able to organize on a global scale. And to do that, we need to be able to vote globally. And to make those votes mean anything, we need a way to fund global initiatives. And here's the punchline. Trying to do all of that, organizing, voting, and funding on a global scale is next to impossible when your entire economic system is built on the currency of a single nation. You need a neutral foundation, a shared ground that belongs to no one and everyone, to build all of that on top of. And that really boils down the entire philosophy here. This isn't about control, it's about coordination. The goal isn't for one group to have power over another. The goal is to create a stable foundation that empowers everyone to work together. And I think this final quote just captures the spirit of it all so well. The ambition here isn't some arrogant claim to have created better money. It's actually much more humble and maybe more profound. It's about trying to create a financial tool that does less harm, that can last for a very long time, and that genuinely belongs to everyone. And that really leaves us with one big final question to think about. If a tool like this existed, if we actually had a truly neutral and stable economic foundation for the whole world, what could we build on top of it? What kinds of global cooperation, things that seem impossible today, might suddenly become possible?